12 o'clock, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear guests. We're starting our session of Dissertation Council for the dissertation, for the defense of dissertation of Trokhinova Olga, for the topic for the degree of political sciences. So the topic is legitimizing of unpopular political decisions, communicative aspects. By the degree of St. Petersburg University of September. Blokhin Igor Nikolaevich, professor of the Department of Theory of Journalism and Mass Communications.
Разрешите представить мне моих коллег, членов Совета. Панцирев Константин Арсеньевич, доктор политических наук, Санкт-Петербургский государственный университет. Пронин Александр Алексеевич, доктор филологических наук, Санкт-Петербургский государственный университет. Каминская Татьяна Леонидовна, доктор филологических наук, Новгородский государственный университет имени Ярослава Мудрого. Строуский Дмитрий Леонидович, доктор политических наук, Ариэльский университет, Израиль. Сначала хотелось бы отметить, что согласно...
First of all, I would like to say that according to federal law number 127 on state and on science and state scientific and technological policy, St. Petersburg University received the right to infer academic degrees independently. In accordance with this, an act was issued on the 1st of September 2016. According to this act, a council meeting of the dissertation council is legitimate if no less than 2/3 of the established membership of the dissertation council present. We have 5 members. We have all members of the council. Well, I would like to go over the items that we have on the agenda. First is a short presentation of the chairman of the dissertation council. 5 minutes. A short presentation of key elements of the dissertation, of not more than 15 minutes. Questions to the defendant according to the presentation, 2 minutes per question, and then answers of the defendant. Then all members of the dissertation council read out their reviews, 10 minutes per speaker, and then the chairman will also read his review, and then questions will be answered by the defendant, not more than 15 minutes, open discussion. Anyone present who would like to speak about the dissertation, 5 minutes per speaker will be able to speak. All those who want to make these comments need to register in the registration journal, and when they speak up, they have to introduce themselves. Then the concluding statements of the defendant, not more than 5 minutes, and then the academic advisor of the defendant will speak for 3 minutes. Then a discussion of up to 5 minutes before the voting procedure will take place, and this is an open, this is a closed episode. Then the voting, the transmission will be switched off, and then open voting, and then a decision will be taken, and then the concluding word of the concluding statement of the defendant of not more 2 minutes before I endorse this agenda. I would like you to switch off your mobile telephones. Thank you very much for your consideration, and also I'd like to say that a live broadcast with simultaneous interpretation has been conducted and on the website of the university. And I would like to now start with the first item on the agenda. This is the short presentation of the chairman of the Legitimation Council. The legislation of Trokhinova Olga Igorevna seeking the degree of candidate of political science in journalism on the topic legitimizing unpopular political decisions and communicative aspects was received for defense and was accepted for defense on the 18th of June 2019, and then the Legitimation Council was formed. I already mentioned all the members of the Legitimation Council. So what paperwork did we receive for this defense? First of all, the personal application of the defendant addressed to the rector of St. Petersburg University, Nikolai Mikhailovich Kropychev, then a review of the academic advisor, Achkasova Vera Alexeyevna, Doctor of Political Science, Professor, Head of Department of Public Relations and Politics and Government Relations, St. Petersburg University, and then a list of publications of up to consisting of 4 names, titles, where in which key aspects of the dissertation are covered, and they've been published in the journals reviewed by the Minister of Education, Russian Federation. Then there's a certificate on study that state that that's in period of study in postgraduate studies was taken, and the following exams were passed successfully: history and philosophy of science, English, and journalism. Also, there's a conclusion on the recommendation of the dissertation legitimizing of an unpopular political decision communicative aspect for defense was passed on the 5th of April 2019. Then the diploma or the degree of the specialist in journalism and cum laude, then dissertation in Russian and English, both in hard copy and soft copy. I also have to note that all the documents comply with clause 12, chapter 3 of the Act on granting degrees in St. Petersburg University. And I would like to give the floor to the defendant for a short presentation. Thank you very much, Igor Nikolaevich. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, my dissertation is titled Legitimizing of Political Decisions, Communicative Access, and Unpopular Political Decision is an integral part of the political process. This process phenomenon has not yet received a comprehensive and in-depth study in either foreign or domestic literature. The history is familiar with the whole series of different decisions and their orientation, degree of success, and support. We can mentioned here: the Dublin Agreement, which regulates the asylum seekers in the European Union, healthcare reform, the USAIS, and others. The phenomenon of delegitimacy and the process of legitimization is based on the whole range of different national and irrational factors, which does not always imply any political participation and democratization of political process. The current political situation and domestic media discourse have seriously updated both on popular decisions themselves and their consequences. In the framework of the study, according to the generally recognized scientific approach, legitimacy is interpreted as an inalienable quality of any authority. Legitimacy is the correspondence between the norms and the rules shared by society and the ways in which powers exercise in it. What methods, means, and technologies achieve this conformity? In this, the academic world, interest in the process of legitimation has arisen relatively recently. Legitimation appears as a process, social practice, the ultimate goal of which is to achieve the legitimacy of a social and political phenomenon. The balance between the power and government and the participation of citizens in the management process of decision-making is one of the grounds for legitimization. Accordingly, in democratic societies, this balance is natural, and totalitarian authoritarian ones, it requires additional conformative process and the use of community techniques. The object of this research is the process of legitimizing popular political decisions in terms of what we see here in Russia. The purpose, the objectives of the study is the analysis and definition of the phenomenon of an unpopular political decision, identifying the causes of unpopularity. The study of the process of communication support of unpopular political decisions, determination of the dominant political media discourse that arises around popular decisions, as well as an analysis of the dynamics and public moods and the identification of communicative actions aimed at optimizing and socially recognizing a decision. Identification of systemization of factors. The following provisions are to be defended. A political decision acquires a characteristic of unpopularity, provided that it contradicts the interests of broad social groups of the population, and when passing through a system of mass communications. The decision causes public censure, condemnation, negative reaction, since it can change the existing patterns of interaction between social institutions, change usual conventional traditions with lifestyles of the population. In most cases, the media perform a supporting function, broadcast various points of view of representatives of the authorities, experts, and society. However, today the significance of journalistic investigations representing their own positions of the media, media represents their own position, the most pressing topics, is increasing. An unpopular political decision may affect the increase in the level of social tension in the absence of communicative support. Social tension is a special social state characterized by increased anxiety, insecurity, fear, and aggression of the population or its individual groups. This is the first stage of a widespread social conflict. Interactive interaction in the process of political decision-making with the help of communication technologies allows us to create mechanisms for political participation and reduce stress. And the complex, comprehensive communicative action it goes a long way towards achieving the decision. And the popular political decision has the potential consolidation of public groups up to the formation of public consensus. So the main factor of ensuring the images of an unpopular political decision is the comprehensive communication support. And we also we also saw that some manipulative technologies can reduce the risk of mass protest activity at this particular moment, but they will have negative consequences which are reflected in long-term consequences and a latent decrease in trust in government. Analysis of the communication support of unpopular political decisions showed the use of manipulative technologies can have a momentary effect, but then lead to the formation of a public request for a change of government. In communication support aimed at legitimizing unpopular political decisions, communication is initiated by a political leader play an increasingly important role. The study showed that the most effective communication support technologies are based on personal communication initiated by a political leader who is ready to take responsibility for implementing unpopular measures. Statements by political leaders and government officials are becoming key stages of communication support. Communication support for unpopular political decisions must be built using the tools of political rhetoric based on rational argumentation. However, often to reduce social tension, the media appeal to emotions and politicians turn to popular statements promising a radical and simple solution to pressing problems. Well, we can divide all the technologies that are used in this process into several groups. The first group of technologies is aimed at working with a protest core. These are technologies related to establishing a dialogue, initiating feedback, building two vectors, one of which is aimed at reducing the level of negative information, and the second at finding positive information agendas. The second group of technology is supportive. These are reactive communications aimed at shaping the agenda for sympathetic citizens. Finally, the third group is technologies aimed at neutral citizens. This is the integrated use of proactive and reactive communication. The main purpose of their application is to create a common confirmation field in which the general public will be included. So there are three ways of analyzing this. There are three levels, including semantic, technical, technological, or influential levels, and they all require particular attention. Public consensus is a key condition for the legitimacy of all government actions. At the moment, all the developments of theoretical approaches and methods for transforming unpopular decisions into acceptable ones is at the initial stage. The main conclusions on this issue are presented in the above study. The dissertation research is practice-oriented in nature and reflects the results of the analysis of empirical material obtained using various methods. This underlines the variety of research approaches applicable to the study of unpopular political decisions. The results obtained during the work do not claim to be comprehensive and are open to discussion. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm ready to answer any questions. Do we have any questions based on what we've heard? Dmitry Leonidovich Trofkin, please. Stronsky, sorry. Strovsky. Fortunately, there's no sound.
Вообще возможна легитимация? Я имею...
Can legitimation be possible in Russia at all? I mean the trends that we see in the political Russia of Russia that have accumulated over the years, and now they're they've reached a cynical level of denigration. So do you think that legitimation is possible? So I see the goals, but I can see the solutions. So what is can this process actually take place? Thank you very much for this question. I will answer your question when I answer the reviews. But according to my position, legitimation is possible, undoubtedly, and I didn't mean to assess the success of such measures, but at this present moment, legitimization is possible because any political regime can do that, and they need that. So we are talking about the absence of legitimization. We talk about election rigging and manipulation used by the government. So how can we talk about legitimization? How can we talk about, because the goal of this government is to undermine legitimization. I'm trying to study communication techniques that are used by government and media that that are aimed at creating an information agenda. Well, this includes manipulation, but my goal was to identify effective techniques that build a dialogue between government and society. Any questions? I have a question. I understand that the presentation should be under certain time limit, but you haven't clarified one very important issue. What is the measurement apparatus? How do we measure legitimization? According to the traditional approach, the effectiveness of legitimization is the absence of open protest, but this methodology is not effective and doesn't reflect the picture, the real picture. So I used content analysis, interviews, in-depth interviews, talked to members of the community who supported in a communication the domain of unpopular decision, and I also use my own content analysis in order to see how society treats communication actions by the government. One more question. Since this interest has arisen, can we see a false legitimation? Talking about the context that we study here. The effectiveness of legitimization is measured by traditions and values that are inherent in society, because the phenomenon of legitimization is a very complex one. It's a symbiosis of different factors, subjective, emotional factors, and rational, objective factors. So this issue needs to be studied further, just as the whole process of legitimization that the academic community is concerned with. Then we are going to proceed to the reviews by members of the Dissertation Council. So in the order that we've been listed, first I would like to give the floor to Konstantin Arsenievich Pantarev, St. Petersburg University. Thank you very much, Igor Nikolaevich, dear Chairman, dear members of the Dissertation Council, dear colleagues. I would like to note that Olga Igorevna's dissertation is written covers a very important issue, and any state at a particular period of time needs to take unpopular but necessary political decision that society then discusses whether they're good, and there are waves of protest and actually can cause a vote of non-confidence in the government, and the decisions that are unpopular but have no communication support become incomprehensible for the society, and therefore can cause a protest and tension. And the author talks about the experience of Russian unpopular government's unpopular decisions, and studies this process, and then draws conclusions about how this has been handled communicatively, and what communication techniques have been used. And then the author generalizes, and so the relevance of the problem is obvious, because this is the first research that deals directly with the unpopular decisions, and so the relevance and the novelty of the originality of the work are undoubtedly undoubted, and the author uses documents of government bodies and also a wider range of literature, and this is enough to comprehensively handle the issues that are dealt in the dissertation. So the goals have been achieved, the objectives have been successfully fulfilled. And in Chapter 1, Theoretical Foundations of the Research, and the survey of literature, including cognitive approaches, are presented, and the role of communication technologies are defined, and there's a classification of unpopular decisions, political decisions, and there were 2 case studies: renovation of old housing in Moscow, and the increase of pension age, retirement age, have been discussed, and communication that surrounded these 2 decisions has been studied. This is a comprehensive study because the conclusions meet the introduction, the introductory statements, but there are also, of course, some drawbacks in the dissertation. I think that a chronological timeline should be defined better, because we see 2004 the period is they studied is between 2004 2019, but the research actually refers to some studies, some events that even prior to the period, the beginning, and then also the period is studied unevenly. For example, the period between 2004 and 2006, for example, is just mentioned in passing because, but we have unpopular decisions that date back to those 2 years, like introduction of a toll payment for long-distance lorries, and then communication, censorship package of Yerovaya, etc. I would like to ask the author also to clarify why the cases that she took were actually taken for study, and then these comments are my personal opinions. Conceptually, they don't diminish the value of the dissertation. I think the author of the dissertation is an independent researcher, and 10 articles that have been published cover fully the findings of the dissertation, and so the dissertation of Trokhinova, Olga, Igorevna on legitimizing unpopular political decision complies with the requirements of St. Petersburg University on conferral of academic degrees of the candidate of political sciences, and so the author is entitled to this degree. Thank you. Thank you, Konstantin Arsenievich. Next, I would like to give the floor to Alexeyevich Pronin, St. Petersburg University. Thank you very much, Igor Nikolaevich, and dear colleagues present here. As we've just heard, the relevance of the dissertation is unquestionable. It covers a very important issue in political science, and concrete case studies testify to that. The author understands the complexity of the relationship between the subject and object, and follows some previous definitions that she defines decisions, unpopular decisions, as those that are go in contradiction with the established traditions of a political society and the public opinion, etc. And then she deals with communication support, and this is the logic of the dissertation. In chapter 1, as we've already heard, the author deals with the history, the background, and then terminology, concepts, and identifies unpopular political decision as a scientific concept, she illustrates her definitions with historic examples, and she says that fully to mitigate unpopular decisions, without any communicative support is absolutely impossible. But even with communication decisions, unpopular political decisions stay acute and stay discussion points in society. So the this phenomenon is studied at the macro level and the micro level, between government society and between concrete officials and protest individuals of the protest movements. And she talks about different popular decisions as the Crimea question and others. And she mentions that that unpopular decisions, the protest, the reaction to unpopular decision has to be predicted by the authorities. Then we have, and then the author looks at it also from the point of view of society, and in this regard, the decision to renovate, to resettle people from old housing and renovate old housing in Moscow, and first of all, the author says that the authors, this decision actually was preceded by communication campaign in support of this decision, and this is considered by the author as a successful communication campaign. But less successful is the pension reform, and she discusses statements by politicians and media contact that relates to this decision, media coverage. And she says that this was done through manipulation, because the political discussion was carried out during the World Cup that took place in Russia, in order to divert the attention of the public from this potentially explosive issue, and the assessing the effectiveness of the methods, including the statements of leaders of the state, leads to conclusions that risk management in Russia is characterized by the dominating role of political leaders, and it can become successful if rational arguments are used. And the author then formulates recommendations how to support such decision, manage these decisions. So the main advantages of this work include deep analysis of content in chapter 2. As I said, this is the most important part of the dissertation, And the third is the understanding of the prospects of this discussion, academic discussion. And then there are drawbacks as well. First of all, they relate to methodology. The methodology. The process of communication is a priori two-directional. Well, I think that the addressee, the recipient of this communication, the individual user of media lacks focus because we don't see any reception, reactions. We only learn about it from experts' opinions. Well, maybe there should have been some focus groups set up that would deal with public opinion, and this would make conclusions more profound. And then some recommendations need additional arguments because very often it's unclear where these recommendations are coming from, and some recommendations are quite trivial in nature. And then semiotic statements, technological design and communication support are terms that lead us to concluding that the actors are consciously included by the communication agent into this communication process, but it doesn't happen this way. Very often these individuals and agents join the communication process spontaneously. But on the whole, the dissertation complies with all the requirements of the Act that governs the conferral of degrees of sciences in St. Petersburg University, and so the author is entitled to this degree. Thank you very much, Alexander Alexeyevich. And now I would like to give the floor to Professor Kaminska from Yaroslav Mudry University of Great Novgorod. Dear colleagues, dear members of the Dissertation Council, the importance is increasing that related to any communication dialogues between society and government. When we talk about legitimizing political decisions, the author puts questions: how does the government legitimize unpopular decisions? The relevance is absolutely clear and it's been mentioned already, and it's based on very good empirical base, and this is content and as of media text, but also other aspects of and this is a new political practice in Russia, and this is an understudied area, and so the empirical, the classification of empirical material is very important, and that talks about the mediatization of political life in Russia. Communication technologies as the object of the study. The logic of the dissertation is from the general to the particular, and the author's study of the material is very valid. Expert interviews I used, content analysis in used, the period it covers the period of between 2004 and 2019, and especially there are two case studies on the one includes one of them is a very important issue of the increasing of retirement age, and also we see that what government did was trying to diverge the attention of society from pension reform to the World Cup, and also the mediation of the president that served as an impartial umpire to decrease the protest. Unfortunately, there's no format of algorithm, and that makes it unclear how conclusions actually reflect on the case study, and some conclusions are quite general, and there are some problems with notions and the definitions of notions. So, for example, the author says that that media talked broadly about the values of that were connected with pension reform, but without focusing on the concrete core values. But all these drawbacks don't decrease the positive attitude, my positive attitude to the work, and again 10 works that have been published in prestigious journals actually testify to the gravity, to the seriousness of the research, and therefore I can say that I endorse the dissertation, and that the dissertation author can be conferred on the third degree, and then then of course the author of the next review comes from Israel. We've heard all the reviews from my colleagues. I'm not going to read out my whole review. I would like to just voice my observations about this work. Any dissertation work, any dissertation council their aims are to generate discussion rather than state what facts they found. Well, dissertation, the author is anxious to present the dissertation in good light, but I would like to just briefly mention my observations that are based on the dissertation and the presentation of the defendant today, and the discussion that we've had up to this point. The issue that is studied is very important, because the aspect of legitimization that must be present in today's media and political practice is not resolved at all. Government does what it wants. Media dance to the pipes, to the pipe of the government, and the listener or the reader is brainwashed. But the this is a bit grotesque, but in this current condition, the question is, can legitimization be possible? Because because government doesn't want to achieve that, but the society doesn't want to be the actor of this process. Well, when I read this work, the work is logical. Theoretical literature is there. The qualification of the author is high, is unquestionable. At the same time, I always thought to myself, why the author didn't put this main question. When Dostoevsky's character said, when is this the time when there's nowhere we can actually go else? Can legitimization of political decisions take place, and is taking place? I cannot get concerned with the renovation, but I'm very much concerned with pension reform, because I'm nearing a retirement age and my relatives, my family live here. But government manipulated this issue, absolutely. I think that the author didn't dare to relate this problem from a citizenship perspective, and this is reflected. Well, I saw a lack of concern with this issue on the part of the author of the dissertation. Unfortunately, a lack of concern is evident in so much research in Russia. If academics don't decry it, don't get concerned with them, then who else will? And then this issue will not be resolved. If I was too emphatic or passionate about, well, please forgive me, but I think this is important, because I think that attitude to government decisions in the academic community is not critical enough. On page 21, the author says, political decision is a reaction to a political problem as a result of political reflection in order to resolve the problem. And so where is this reflection on the part of the dissertation author? Unfortunately, according to the new rules, we don't have room for a fully fledged discussion. But where is this reflection in society? Because there's no feedback from society on over any decision of government. First of all, is if the actors of communication situation are generally concerned, they voice their opinion, but here I cannot see that. And there are some but less important critical points. The author says that effective or ineffective political decision can be determined by in the context of a political process. Well, that means that I will not live to the date, for example, in 100 years, when the results, then the effectiveness will be determined. Well, that's a sad conclusion for me, both privately and academically. And also, I also object to the term of society organized by government. We cannot talk about society. If we talk about civil society, this is where the conflict can arise. But and then how can a problem be resolved if there's no conflict between different parties to the process? Media, despite what the author says, media have not become a buffer between the regime and society, neutralizing protest movements. They cannot be, because media today, they're like a pet dog who barks on behalf of the master. I want to say all these things because this is the beginning that the author can use either to create a personally supported academic reflection, and this only this approach can lead to an in-depth study. And as far as the other points, in many aspects, the work complies with the requirements the work is complete, logic is there, the work is interdisciplinary and comprehensive. It's on the interface of media studies, political science, and I think that on the whole that the work complies with the requirements for such works. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much, Dmitry Leonidovich. As a conclusion, the chairman, Igor Nikolaevich Blokhin, takes the floor with some concluding review. The relevance of this work is based on the current trends in Russian political life. Media community and political actors take part in these political processes, and these activities are geared at keeping the balanced legitimation. There are three factors of government actions. First, unpopular decisions are a breakdown of feedback between society and government. Media is charged with maintaining this feedback. Individual persons gain more weight in this process. The relevance, the originality of the work includes the interpretation of the phenomenon, the concepts and methods. It's cross-disciplinary, and unpopular political decision is analyzed from a psychological, organizational, communication and political perspectives, and the analysis of the phenomenon political decision is analyzed from the point of view of the relationship between society and government, and then political decisions are analyzed in terms of the context, the specificity of each decision, and at different levels, micro and macro levels, and so spin doctoring is image making, and other methods and techniques are analyzed. The objectives that are included in the work have been achieved. And first chapter is theoretical, has a theoretical survey of the literature. Second one's practice oriented. The solutions for identifying identifying the effectiveness of legitimizing measures are presented in the work. So the work also involves an analysis of pressure groups. Among my critical points, I would like to mention that the relationship between political actors is concerned with mechanisms of political decision making. We need to first study more. We need to discern the legitimation of the government and of political decisions, and we have to understand that confidence and trust in government does not overlap with trust in government decisions. So we have to take into account the differentiation of branches of government and to judicial, executive and legislative, and then how media are used as a platform for discussion to imitate civil liberties, the government simulates developing this platform as a pluralist market of ideas, and media serve as a platform of people, of the ability of people to see what government decisions come from and what politicians think. The period again that has been studied is also studied unevenly, and some political decisions are only touched by passing, and then some conceptual boundaries should be clarified better between different phenomena. And then again, also an in-depth analysis is required, studying the decision making at different levels of government, national, regional, and local. So the author uses at the tradition, political sciences tradition and media studies tradition, and she does it comprehensively, and the validity of conclusions is based on the correctness of references and citations. The style of writing is laudable, and the depth of analysis is also adequate. So therefore, my conclusion is that the dissertation it complies with the requirements that are set by St. Petersburg University for such a degree, and no violations of the procedure has been detected. They have been detected. So, dear ladies and colleagues, dear Chairman, dear members of the Station Council, thank you very much for the reviews and studying the text. While taking into account the academic originality of the topics discussed, all these comments will be and should be applied in my future work, taken into account. First of all, I would like to start with my response to Igor Nikolaevich Blokhin's comments for the affirmation of the legitimacy of power and the legitimacy of political decisions, whether they are in direct correlation. And he says that additional confirmation is required. According to the studies of Elena Borisovna Shestopal, Tatiana Nikolaevna Samsonova, and Olga Sergeyevna Deineka, and other authors representing Moscow and Petersburg schools of political psychology, the personification of political practice and the mass consciousness of Russians is acquiring tremendous significance, and in the current conditions, this process of personification is clearly demonstrated by the cases examined, within which the figure of a political leader and his actions play a significant role. The interdependence of the legitimacy of power or authorities and the legitimacy of decisions can be traced, but are not to be taken a priori. I base my conclusions on Edward Bernays and Jürgen Habermas and Manuel Castells. Practice has repeatedly demonstrated the validity of such their views during the events of May, for example, 1978 in France. The prefect of Paris Police, Maurice Grimaud, sent a message to his subordinates, representatives of law enforcement agencies, in which law enforcement was not considered as a goal but as a means with mandatory consideration for the consequences. As politicians then noted, Grimaud taught that police actions in such circumstances should not leave any marks on the soul or body. This can be considered as a guide for representatives of state structures of modern Russia. In general, the lack of dialogue leads to incitement and escalation of conflict. Responding to comments of Konstantin Pantserev, I want to note that the choice of the indicated chronological framework of the study is not accidental. The author's work is focused on political decisions implemented in 2017-2019. Pension reform and renovation of Moxon housing were selected as the two most resonant decisions of the federal agenda. Then the situation that arose in the winter of 2019 in St. Petersburg, partially touched on page 46, really needs to be clarified. We're talking about the removal of snowfall, because what we saw there is the emergence of the meme Beglov spades, because acting governor Alexander Beglov distributed a shovel to 18 district heads, distributed shovels to 18 district heads, the heads of the housing committee and vice governor. I also thank Konstantin Arsenyevich for recommendation of structuring the list of references. I think that this is an important remark. The recommendations I also note with gratitude the comments of Professor Pronin and Professor Trotsky about the need to study the audience. The result of such a study will really seriously complement the existing provisions, and large state volume of the data obtained will be able to claim, reflection, and further studies. Turning to the comments of Tatiana Kaminska, I want to emphasize that the study of political communication practices demonstrates a dynamic change in the techniques used and the variability of the environment and the variability of media consumption. Such conditions devalue the identification of an accurate communication support algorithm, which includes current methods and techniques. The study allowed us to identify patterns and make recommendations on the formation of a communication strategy. I thank Tatiana Leonidovna for clarifying questions. Under the tools of political rhetoric, I mean a whole formation of speech discourse, speech exposure, using language strategies, the use of certain nominations, re-expression, aesthetization, manipulation tools, etc. Comprehensive information support implies the use of a wide range of communication techniques, communication methods and tools with various audiences to fill in all existing information gaps around a potential unpopular political decision. Such a task actualizes the need to include as an accompanying person in the media discussion. The need to include an accompanying person in the media discussion. However, of course, the discussion around a potential unpopular decision, potentially important decision, will not be limited to only to them, as Alexander Alexeyevich Pronin said. In conclusion, I want to note that on page 46, an unfortunate technical error was made. We're talking about the work of the press services of the Rostov region. I thank everybody. I thank my reviewers. I thank Professor Dmitry Leonidovich for such a deep acquaintance with the results of the presented dissertation. This discussion that he started will be continued. In terms of the process of legitimation and the notion of legitimacy, the process of legitimization is the process of getting acceptance by government of their decisions, acceptance on the part of the of society. So different historical conditions call for different different solutions. And I would say that I could quote that civil society, that some decisions have to be taken by the government without consultation. According to American researcher Richard Rose, who views Russian society as an hourglass society where an active social life takes place at the top and bottom of the clock, but the connections between parts of society are limited. In this situation, the government itself must take measures to ensure recognition of its right to legitimate coercion. In this situation, the government itself. Modern researchers define this process as a downward legitimation provided by communication and consisting in the desire to achieve the location and support of citizens through the legitimization of the political system, strategies, decisions, plans, etc. The downward legitimation is also characteristic of state-organized societies, the question of which was asked by Dmitry Leonidovich. This term refers to the states themselves, as well as unrecognized states, unions of states, their population, the system of public relations, and mechanisms of public authority, which also need legitimation. This process has its own specificity, more based on communication. This phenomenon is considered by modern experts in the field of law and international relations. According to researchers, legitimacy often becomes the result of some compromise which was achieved, among other things, through the mechanisms of political participation of citizens. One cannot but agree with the thesis that put forward by the distinguished Dmitry Leonidovich Trotsky about the contemporary characters of the Russian media embedded in the existing system of social interaction. However, the study makes it possible to draw the following conclusions. Firstly, far from all political decisions, not all political decisions receive proper coverage and communication support. The practice of implementing unpopular measures has shown the need to develop and plan strategic information communication campaigns. Secondly, the media can stimulate a certain emotional background, affect the level of social tensions. However, in today's reality, it is extremely rare that media play the role of a platform for dialogue between the authorities and society, and they do not perform interactive functions. I thank the members of the Dissertation Council for all comments, and I will use them in my future work. I would like to ask those present from the audience, do we have any people interested in commenting? I would like now to give the floor to the academic advisor of the dissertation, Vera Achkasova, Professor Vera Achkasova. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, I'd like to first touch upon a very important aspect. This is the first defendant that has completed a postgraduate study in public relations, and this is legitimation of a new communication studies field in St. Petersburg University, and I hope that this will contribute to the formation of a new field. Our work, our collaboration has been going on for several years. When she joined St. Petersburg University in 2013, coming from Bonch-Bievich University. There have been several factors involved that affected their work. First, the issues that are covered, that they are part of the research conducted at the department that I'm chairing, and the dependent took part as a research member for a grant study that has been dedicated to this area, and our research is based on very strong ties with the government and the government relations, and therefore we received information from them. And the issue is very complex because ours is an emergent society, and therefore the process of legitimization is a very complicated issue. But the defendant has classified the material, has reviewed a lot of literature, and I think that this is a very rounded, well-rounded researcher and very independent researcher, and also she teaches and gives lecture courses and uses this material in her lectures, and she also presented this material at different conferences, international conferences, and also Olga works as a lecturer in Moscow University, and also works as a press secretary of the Faculty of Public Relations, and therefore I would like you to endorse this my support of the dissertation. And I would like to turn to our deliberation period, and I would like the broadcast to be switched off, and I would like to ask the members of the audience to leave the room.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, we continue our session. I'd like the broadcast to be switched on and make sure it works. Thank you. So, main moment is coming for this session. I put into the vote to an open vote the resolution to confer the degree of candidate of political science. I remind you that not more than there shouldn't be Professor Pansarev, you vote in favor. Professor Pronin in favor. Tatiana Leoniduk in favor. Dmitry in favor. Ostrovsky in favor. And the chairman of the council is in favor as well. Well, that means that dear colleagues, out of the 5 members of the council, 5 present members, all 5 voted in favor of the decision to confer the degree of candidate of political sciences on Olga Igorevna Trokhina is taken. This decision is taken. Olga Igorevna, this is your chance to say a few words in conclusion. I would like to thank the chairman of the Universitetskaya and members of the Universitetskaya. This is a very important day. I would like to thank Vera Alexeyevna Skasova. She is the kind of teacher that any graduate student would dream of having. I plan to continue my research work, and this has been honor for me to study here in the postgraduate course and to study under those professors who stood at the foundation of political communication, public relations. I would like to congratulate you and Vera Alexeyevna and your department on the successful conclusion of this important work. That this start is a good one, and hopefully this will be not the last defense in the line. Thank you.